miters are different than what you can do at the miter saw because you're dealing with really wide stock, right? So we can cut easy miters here, and especially with the fest tool, it is really quick and accurate and easy to adjust. Truly the best way to run a carcass miter is with a sliding table saw. We sort of have that going on over here with this sliding mechanism from SawStop. That thing's okay. I don't really like it. In fact, I ignore it in the school, personally, for things I make. And then you have like really high-end cabinet shops that have their sliding table saw, which is like $30,000, $40,000. So you're probably gonna go home and not have a $30,000 or $40,000 table saw to play with. But you will have something like this, or something similar. The process I'm showing you could even do with a DeWalt, job site saw. Be a little harder, but it would be possible. So this setup is good to see, just to get yourself a really, really clean looking miter joint. It's a two-step process. So there's some test stock. It's important to have test stock. The first step is making sure your blade is actually at 45 degrees. Once you know you're actually cutting at 45, then we're gonna adopt the fence in there to accommodate for the thickness of our actual carcass material. Okay? So we'll talk about that more when we get there. The first thing you have to do is remove the riving knife. And this is the only operation where you can do this. Okay? So please, people forget after they're doing their carcass miters to put this back. Please remember to put it back. It's dangerous for other folks. So, and you'll see why this is safe when I go through the steps. I'm removing the riving knife. Lowering the blade. Then I'm going to bring the fence over to the left side. That's where it has to be for this. That's because the blade tilts only in one orientation, and so we need to bring that, it only tilts this way. It's a left tilt blade. If it was a right tilt blade, I could leave this over here. And let's get a miter gauge with a longer fence on it, some sacrificial piece, whatever this is. Plywood's good. I'm gonna check to see if my fence is square. That's good. And get this out of the way for now. I'm just going to make some cuts with a 45-degree angle, then we'll bring the fence in. If you have a zero clearance throat plate, you'd have to remove that and get something for the angle. For the school, this is big enough. I'm just going to leave it in there. And
a little bit of lubrication.
There is a gauge on the front of this, so I can see what angle I'm tilting this to. So I'm going to go to 45, and we can't necessarily trust the 45 on here. When you have your own saw, you can absolutely lock. There's a nut where you can say, I tilt this, this bottoms out, and you've tested your saw to make sure that's 45. You can start trusting that. Here, we are not going to trust that. I want to check with shoes untied.
Do you have to check with your shoes untied, or? Bazinga.
It is the preferred method.
Okay, we're back. So, you can check the angle with digital angle finder. I've been liking these less and less because I'll zero this out, I'll put it on the blade, and it'll start reading 45. whatever degree I want. But when I'll tilt the blade a little bit and I'll see it move and the number won't change. So they're just not quite accurate enough. All of these are to get you close, but I have a miter square. So I'm just going to use this to get myself close. I have to do test cuts anyways. I trust this thing. So when you're checking for, that being said, I still use this if I want the dovetails where I'm like, okay, I need 14 degrees. These are great for that kind of operation, but for 45, there's tools that might be better. Checking the miter for 45, the blade, I can come in this orientation and view here. A lot of my square is on the throat plate, and that might not be in line with my cast iron tabletop. So I'd rather come from this direction. I want to make sure I'm between teeth, so it's not tricking me. And I'm going to come down here. Just take a look and see what we got. Okay, so it looks good. I'm not seeing any light going through. So I can lock that. Now I'm going to make some cuts on something nice and flat and true, like MDF or plywood. I'll make some, this is about 14 by 2 something. And you don't want these to be too short because I may need to do this operation again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my miters, tape them together, see if I get a clean miter. If not, I need to step this in a little more. I'll make the whole box smaller. So you'll see what I mean. But if you start too short, it becomes a dangerous cut. So give yourself some length to play with. So make these cuts. Flip these. I need these to be equal length so I can get a clean box. So I have a stop block and clamp. Just make sure I can hit the top of my outside. Should be good there. So I can butt them all up against here. Notice where I'm standing, that could become a projectile, so I'm out of the way. If you have the blade too low, it's going to bind at the set of the teeth, so you need to find that to raise the blade. Now we'll tape our box together.
Yes.
I could check one miter, right? If I cut one, and let me just talk about this real quick. If I cut one and take a look at this, and go, you know, okay, looks really good. But if I have a small error in here, it gets compounded as I make a box. So you have to build something with, 4 corners to make sure you don't have some issue in there. Help me?
Sure.
We'll just lift it up gently. Nope.
Nope.
Just tilt it.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
And forward.
Okay, so I'm looking for 2 things in this. I'm looking to make sure that my miter's closed tight and it doesn't stair step itself up. And what that would mean, okay, so if they're not closed tight, if I have an opening in the toe or the heel, I need to adjust my blade up or down a little bit. If it's clean, then that's at 45, I'm good. So that looks good. And what is it? I never remember. If it's at the toe, if it's at the heel, you need to bring the blade up just a hair. This is in the handout. This is the thing I almost like, right. And it'll be slight variations. And this is why you have that length. I would set up another stop block, make cuts on both sides again, and do a dry fit, right? Until I know I'm at 45. This looks good. If it's meeting together, but it's stair-stepping, meaning your pieces aren't in plane with each other, that means I am not square to my fence with my miter fence, right? I'm not square to my blade. So there's some sort of twist in my miter fence there. And I need to check that again, make cuts, and move on, okay? But that looks pretty good, right? I mean, I'm happy with that. So we're ready to move on, but I wouldn't move on until that closes up nice and clean, okay? Now,
What's your thoughts on when you say it breaks at 45, heard some theories of setting it a little past, so the tips of the miters,
yeah. So I think that's kind of like a carpenter's trick,
Yeah, right.
Which have I done it? 100%. But there is a way you can just nail it.
Yeah.
So nail it, right? You favor the tip or even maybe favor the heel because you can roll the tip over just a little bit. Right? So we're still gonna have to break this edge with hardwood. Okay, so my blade's set. Now I need to put this guy on my rip fence. This is my sacrificial fence that we're gonna ride our material on. And put it about right here. It's good to have this. We ran a dado and glued this on just so it gave it some reference. I'll talk about what the important numbers are for this. You'll need to make your own if you're going to run your miters. You might be able to share it with one other person, but then you have to retire. You'll see why. And this is why we cannot have the riving knife, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to bury the blade into that fence, and the riving knife would get in the way of that. And you'll see that when we make this cut, I can't feed any material into the blade, so it's not a dangerous cut in that sense with no riving knife. You have we have our carcass that we want to miter right here. It's our small box, grain running long ways. The miters will be on the end grain. I have also milled up a piece of hardwood that is the exact same thickness as this stock. I ran it at the same time. It's not a little under, it's not a little over, it has to be the same. I know we've fibbed that before in other demos. You can't. If you need to run your material one more time if you forgot an extra piece like this, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna, oh, and this is riding on the fence about 1/8 of an inch, right? So I'm just able to glide the thickness of my material on there. So if you're making a carcass with a 5/8 box, this piece of hardwood needs to step a little lower. You don't want it too low. You want this cavity because we have an offcut coming off underneath here. And if that gets bound, it's gonna become a projectile and shoot out, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, first I'm just gonna make a cut with the same thickness test piece. And I'm gonna clamp it to the fence. Make sure I can actually get a cut. Now, I'm going to leave that clamp there, and I'm going to move the fence, but to lower the blade. And I'm going to bring this fence right to the tip of my miter. Gently on there. And if I smash this boy, I'm going to move everything, right? I want that to be right there. That's important. So I'm just going to tap it on until it hits the tip. Right there. Now, pull this away. Turn the blade on. I'm going to feed it into the fence about 1/8 of an inch. And this is why we cannot have the riving knife, because that would get in the way of what I just did, okay? But when I run material on here, I can't get it bound behind there. It's a fence riding only on the outside of that cut, okay? What I'm gonna do is I have my, the first one I cut. I'm gonna do another cut on the other side of this test top, just to see what I get. Still using the fence here. Couple things to note. A rule here is that every time you make a cut with this, you have to turn the saw off and get rid of that piece under there. Even though it fell away safely, if I make 4 of those, it might get bound up and shoot out. And it's happened, and everyone hears it. Mondo's here, this kid Ethan did it. It was very loud. The miters turned out very clean, but extremely scary. So we'll get that out of there. And so now I'm looking to make sure I actually set everything up right? This side where I put my pencil marks was the free form miter. Now I'm riding against my fence. I want to make sure that I'm actually getting something I desire. And so what I'm looking for are a couple things. I'm looking for a miter that just flares off right to the very tip, right? Very soft edge. I'm looking to see if I have a heavy flat on the top of here, or I could also get sort of a scalloping shape on the outside, which means it's taking too much material off, right? So I need to adjust my fence accordingly. What I see on here, I'll show you guys, is just at the very tip, there's a flat there. You guys see that? And that is pretty much what I'm looking for, right? When I bring these miters together, I'll be able to roll those fibers over. I have to break the edge no matter what. If I had anything heavier than that, I would readjust. So I like where it's at. So now I'm finally ready to do my actual miters, okay? And we've been using this fence the whole time, but you don't need to. We can pull this. I would do this if I was doing thin stock like this, but when we have larger carcass pieces, then the better thing is to just run it against the fence, hold it, and push it through, right? And so once I have this set up, I could have a bunch of boxes milled up and batch out perfect miters on boxes for holidays, for whatever it is, right? So once I sort of do this fussy thing, but I've milled all my material at the same time, etc., I can just rip them through. That's great. What else? I thought there was one other thing. I don't know. All right, let's cut it. You should definitely know the inside and outside of your box right now, okay? Yeah. So that's important with triangles or whatever is going on in there. And if you've had the very joyous experience of wood warping or cupping or bowing or twisting, then this is going to be a bit more difficult. Your stock needs to be flat, and you can influence it by running it through a few times, sort of thinking of it like the dado stack, where you kind of do it twice, and then you put more influence in a certain area and bring it through again. But if it's severe, it's going to be really hard to get that miter looking clean. So I'm looking for that consistent flat. And when you're dry fitting miters, blue tape, definitely do it. Even after you do the dominoes, you might want to tape it up just to make sure things meet up cleanly. You can already see where the cupping is. So I'm looking for, do my miters meet up? Are they looking clean? Is there some stair stepping at all, right? There's a little bit of misalignment in this corner I can feel. It probably can be adjusted once you do your joinery, right? These are kind of sliding. But I'm looking for the nice, tight corners, and I like the look of those. You can see that flat on the outside here, just when you look at it, right? And you can see where there's maybe a little bit of cupping up, so there might be some more influence right there. But the moment you glue that together, and you can take like a screwdriver and just roll those fibers on top of each other, and you get a waterfall grain match. So not, it's a little prep, but not a ton, especially if you're gonna make more than a couple. And even if you're doing a side project, something this size, get yourself prepped for 3 or 4, and then you can just knock them out, and you're just at that step, and then you just have to think about joinery. So that's miters on the table saw.
What is that little flat doing to where if you didn't do that and you had it go right to the...
If you had it hit right there, you would also be okay. But a flat that minimal is not a problem, basically, right? If you're looking at a 16th, that's too heavy. But under that, you can roll it over. Yeah.
By roll it over, you mean like brandish it or something?
Yeah, like compress the fibers on top. Like,
Yeah, you do both directions.
Yep, just sort of like, almost like card scraping, like where you
I
kind
see.
of pull it this way, and then I would sort of pull the fibers up that way. And that would disappear fast.
When you're setting up, trying to get that little flat, you're just sort of eyeballing it. Like you've done that with your test stock essentially, and you're kind of looking for it there.
Yeah.
or-
So the test piece was, here's the piece I ran after I brought the fence into the blade, and I saw that same flat.
And then if you had like too much, you'd essentially just move it out or
And bring the
vice
blade
versa.
up a little bit. Yeah, vice versa, yep. So,
In the handout, it says like, if it's too much, do this, bring the blade
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
vice
okay.
versa.
Yeah.
but yeah, the one you really don't want is that scalloping. You see, you kind of start with your piece here, and then it kind of eats away your length at the top. It'll look like that, especially on really wide pieces. No, that's from the where the fence is set. Right, it's bringing too much of your piece into the blade. Right, so you need to bring the fence in more. The other thing I didn't mention, but think of these like cutting for dovetails, where you have your dovetails feed into each other, so you have these sort of outside lengths that go in. Miters are the same way. If I'm making a box like this, I cut square stock from the outside dimensions of my miter, and then I can just go right to this, knowing I'm not going to take off any length on my pieces. So that's another huge benefit to this. I can't, reduce the size. I can keep things square. Okay? And then maybe in a little bit we'll talk about dominoes for people that want to hear about it. Cool?